If you missed the weirdest moment in Indika, I'm not surprised. It happens the moment Indika strips off her sodden habit, and I know gamers only played this hyper-realistic religious interrogation game for the nudity. If you were paying close attention, you probably saw the claws of the devil helping her unclothe. But did you notice this slight pixelation? And if so, did you wonder what it meant? I couldn't stop thinking about this and 100 other design choices after I finished playing Indika. It took core game elements like leveling up and then weaponized their familiarity against me. And it does this by making the game the devil and the devil the game. Indika begins in an achingly mundane convent where our eponymous nun is barely tolerated. This is probably because she hallucinates the voice of the devil.
What does it mean to be truly righteous?
When Indika makes yet another Eucharist all about her, the nuns ship her off with a letter to become someone else's problem. During her journey, she befriends an escaped convict named Ilya. Ostensibly, she's being held hostage by him, but he is weakened by advanced sepsis. He insists on keeping his arm, though it is killing him, because God told him it would be cured by a holy artifact, the Cujet. Indika joins his holy quest, hoping the Cujet will cure her diabolic hallucinations. But she struggles with Ilya's certainty in God, the nun envying the convict for his faith. Like any good modern hyper-realistic game, the UI elements are sparse. They become obvious, almost garish, whenever Indika gains points. Then there's a sudden burst of particle effects and an endorphin juicing sound effect. You gain points by praying and finding relics, things that demonstrate devotion. You lose points when you listen to the devil, and because of how the platform puzzles are structured, you have to listen to the devil to make progress. When Indika is upset, the world tears apart, and the devil peppers her with especially gruesome taunts. To suppress them, you, the player, have to press a button to pray.
Repenting, praying, apologizing.
The purpose of points in the game is, as expected, to level up. And the leveling up mechanic is deeply cynical. The powers are named things like shame, guilt, and repentance, and their only purpose is to get you more points. More points gets you more levels gets you more points. The game is explicit about the fact that the points are absolutely meaningless. So why have them at all? And why call attention to their uselessness? There are also parts of the game that are fully retro-styled, with classic gameplay like racing and platforming. We see a different side of her in these portions, naive and open, full of confidence and free of doubt. There's also no indication that she suffers from hallucinations during this period. We see Indika being wooed by Mirko, who even composes a lullaby for her. But when her father catches him stealing, she refuses to speak up for him, leading to his death. These are the events that forced Indika into the convent, and they play on the themes of the game, free will, and whether it really counts as a choice if the alternatives are particularly gruesome. In the modern timeline, the once vibrant game elements are minimized. What remains has been forced into a new structure, a religious structure, which rewards certain behaviors. At first, I thought these sections were just a way to get us to connect to Indika on a nostalgic level, but because this pixelation intrudes on the hyper-realistic sections, it's a bit more complicated than that. The first time this happens is when Indika and Ilya strip to warm up. It's a soft moment of vulnerability. It's brief and faint, but after all, the devil is in the details. The pixelation occurs again in a later scene, while they're taking a moment to relax after a long Caviar 10 puzzle. She sings to him, the same tune that Mirko played on his flute. So what does it mean that this pixelation happens during moments of tenderness? Does it represent Indika's horny little freak nature? Yes! Yes, it does! But it represents other things as well. Aspects of her former life, this pixelation, her sexual desire, emerge when she makes choices for herself, not restricted by her religious vows. I mean, it's literally paired with her removing a symbol of her devotion. But even then, this pixelation is not free of religious structure. It works in concert with the hands of the devil. As Indika sings, Ilya fully succumbs to the sepsis. Although he believes he must keep the arm for it to be miraculously healed, Indika believes he'll die if it remains. And once he falls unconscious, Ilya can't object to medical intervention. She decides to amputate his arm. And I agree with her in principle. If miracles don't exist, then the only thing that was waiting for Ilya at the end of this quest was closure. And he could only get closure if he survives. It's always noble to hope, but it is a tragedy to rely on it. Or, put in another way, the gods help those who help themselves. On the other hand, this world has dogs the size of sheds, and fish 5 stories tall. So how can I say for sure that miracles can't happen here? Moments before the blade lands, Ilya's eyelids flutter open. Indika kisses him, the fruition of their complicated attraction. It's a romantic choice, and a selfish one. Distracted by the kiss, Ilya cannot explicitly deny consent to having his arm chopped off. Did Indika save his life, or ruin his miracle? Because it's a cutscene, we the players take no actions here. The devil is weirdly subdued, merely pointing out the facts of the situation, then offering, in an innocent voice, that the solution might be prayer. This is fully Indika's choice, and notably, she doesn't lose any faith points for this action. By the end of the game, we still have no way of knowing whether Ilya's miracle would have worked if he had kept his arm. While he prays and Indika holds up his severed limb, we get a snippet of conversation between 2 guards.
Usually people show up about their legs.
And? They grow back.
It's not about that.
The game, very cheekily, refuses to provide a yes or no to whether the Q-Jet actually healed anyone. That would tip the delicate balance of our interpretation of Indika's choice. Because if miracles exist, and Indika defied God's will, then she made a bad choice. If they don't, then she saved Ilya's life. This ambiguity is in direct defiance to one of the more subtle power fantasies that video games offer, the idea that it's always easy to tell what the right thing to do is. In games with a morality system, there are thresholds for sorting a character into good or evil categories, and to do that, behaviors must be assigned point values in the same way that a hit must have a damage value. And a hard-coded scale of goodness and evilness results in some pretty funky math. In Fallout 3, giving a drug addict psycho once is worth the same amount of points as outright killing a good human, where good is defined as marked as a non-evil character in the game's code. This is in part because of how games, and arguably all software, are programmed. They are elaborate and immutable rule systems. They lack the ability to parse complicated, situation-specific details, which is a skill that we humans really take for granted, and which some people simply never use at all. While it is hypothetically possible to code a structure with deep nuance capabilities, it's insanely difficult, despite what the people selling AI might tell you. But also, from a pure design perspective, an input does need to have a reliable output in order to feel fair, which means one morality system that applies equally to all situations and cannot be deviated from. Indika is interrogating what any of that easy solace, that immutable morality even means. What you do in the game doesn't matter as much as how much junk you pick up off the ground. Powers do nothing but increase the amount of points you get. We as players ask, how many prayers do you need to level up? And the devil asks, how many lost letters equal a murder?
Let us put that at 1,000 letters.
The devil exists to interrogate the structures that Indika finds herself in. On the literal level, the religious structure, but on the metaphorical level, the game structure itself. Indika draws parallels between video games and religion in order to argue that both are manufactured morality systems. It is critiquing how they evaluate goodness, and then use that evaluation to reward, punish, and control. Is it really a choice, if the alternative is death? But the devil doesn't just interrogate these structures. He is the structures being interrogated. He is religion and he is the game. In fact, he literally tells us so. In the rush to access the Q-Det, the guards kill a priest, then arrest Indika for the crime. In prison, she reluctantly has sex with a guard in order to be let go. And while that's happening, Indika turns fully inward and has a remarkable red dialogue with the devil. She loses all of her faith points listening to him, and he tells us,
Just remember that good and evil, warm and cold, those are just lines on a thermometer. God and the devil, those are you. One cannot exist without the other.
God and the devil are arbitrary quantifications of goodness or evilness, just like the number systems we assign to temperatures or a list of karmic behaviors in a video game. God and the devil are not beings external from humans, and Indika isn't hearing the voice of the devil, she's hallucinating him. The call is coming from inside the house! Of course, it is interesting that it's the voice of the devil saying this, and not God. He could be lying about all of it. He is, after all, the devil. But regardless of whether or not you trust this voice, the game itself is arguing that religion is a human creation manufactured and maintained by us. The UI tells us that points are meaningless because it wants us to doubt the very structure it is forcing upon us as players. Praying a lot doesn't automatically make you a good person. It only has value in a religious framework that values prayers. Was that too ontological? Points in games might have some kind of in-game power, but they're pointless outside of that constructed system of meaning. You can't pay rent with Elden Ring levels, at least according to my landlord. After this surreal exchange, Indika has one of the most interesting design choices in a game full of interesting design choices. When she escapes from her prison cell, we suddenly switch from third-person mode to first-person mode. This POV shift strongly implies that up till now, we've been seeing the game from the perspective of the devil. Being in first-person mode represents her state of mind. She feels like she's fully succumbed to the devil's influence, become one with him. And since the game itself represents the devil, the camera, a fundamental aspect of the game's structure, has become one with her as well. There's other evidence that confirms this. Indika has a seemingly throwaway line earlier where she describes the devil as always behind my shoulder, aka the over-the-shoulder perspective. And later, during a circular, Escher-esque puzzle, we see a demon moving platforms around in place of Indika. I think we're seeing the true player character here, us as the devil on Indika's shoulder. By the end, Indika has become one with the devil, the game, and us, the player. All of the levels of the game's perspective have collapsed down onto her shoulders. In the closing moments, Indika finds Ilya, who abandoned her, sold the Cudet, and got so drunk he pissed himself. In a nearby pawn shop, she recovers the artifact and sees herself in the mirror, as bedeviled as an egg on a platter. Shaking the Cudet, we find it full of points. We can regain all of the lost levels and more. She also discovers that it's empty. Her vision clears. She sees herself without the burden of belief. Both the devil and any game element have disappeared. She no longer has a need for either. Is this a good ending or a bad ending? Can either such thing really exist in the world of Indika? It's hard not to see it as a bad ending. She lost Ilya, she lost her role in the convent, she lost her faith, and now she's presumably on the run. But I do interpret this as Indika ultimately finding peace with herself. Although we no longer follow her story, it feels as though it will continue somewhere out of our reach. She's finally free, without a devil on her shoulder, and without a player guiding her choices. Okay, this is one interpretation of a very complex game. And if you play it yourself, you're likely to draw your own conclusions from it. So you should do that. You should play Indika and then make a video essay about it so that I can hear your thoughts on it. You should support me on Patreon at patreon.com/thejenna. You might be wondering why. I just watched this video and I got it for free. Well, games like Indika are pushing the boundaries of what games can do and mean and say. And basically, creators that rely on ad revenue can't cover games like this because they're too small and they lack visibility and they don't have good enough SEO. It's not Fortnite, it's not League, it's not, Roblox or Minecraft. So it's harder for people to do video essays about stuff like this. this. I'm able to do it because of my beautiful, gorgeous, drop-dead sexy Patreon subscribers. They allow me to explore interesting angles about the video game community and culture that just you can't do otherwise. I also actually fully live streamed Indika. That's how I played this game on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/the_Jenna. So if you're interested in weird little indie games that don't get a lot of other play otherwise, or horror games, or also weirdly FMV games, I play a lot of FMV games, you should come and hang out. It's twitch.tv/the_Jenna. How much nudity is there in Indika? More than none.